Nedbank has committed to helping alleviate hunger and provide emergency relief to the most vulnerable South African communities during the current COVID-19 pandemic. They've pledged 12 million rand as a donation in aid of hunger relief efforts and to help mobilize, train and equip volunteers with the necessary information and hygiene products to drive awareness across the country. Together with the Department of Health, Nedbank will continue to work with local health departments in each province to provide aid to vulnerable areas. The project involves comprehensive risk communication and community engagement, including hygiene promotion, which includes correct hand washing and sanitizing techniques, as well as information dissemination and awareness. 947-702, KFM 94.5 and Cape Talk thank Nedbank for giving back in COVID times.
This is Eyewitness News.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. South Africa has lost one of its liberation struggle veterans and anti-apartheid heroes in Dennis Goldberg, who died at the age of 87. The ANC has confirmed that he passed away last night. He was recognized for his unwavering commitment to the struggle when he was awarded the Order of Luthuli in silver in 2009. Mia Lindicki takes a look at his life.
Anti-apartheid struggle hero Dennis Goldberg spent 22 years in prison under the apartheid laws. One of his first run-ins with the law was back in 1957. He was arrested for supporting those who took part in the Sharpeville uprising. Goldberg spent 4 months in prison with his mother and subsequently lost his job. He later joined the armed struggle under Ukhonto Wesizwe and helped set up the first training camp for soldiers inside South Africa. Goldberg was arrested in 1963 at Lily's Leaf Farm and was among the accused in the Rivonia trial. He was convicted for his involvement in setting up one of these camps. After 22 years, he was released from prison in 1985, but continued to fight for democratic South Africa from his base in London. Goldberg returned to South Africa in 2002. Mia Lindicki, Eyewitness News.
Teacher organizations and unions are hoping Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga will present a concrete plan that will inspire confidence and ensure all schools comply with COVID-19 health and safety standards before any teaching can resume. The department presented a tentative plan in Parliament yesterday that may see schools reopen from as early as next month. However, education groups have rejected the proposal, saying it lacks direction and is a recipe for disaster, as many schools are ill-equipped to deal with the pandemic. Tando Kupega takes a look.
Teacher unions have reiterated their stance on the reopening of schools during the COVID-19 lockdown, saying many schools in the country are simply not ready. NAPTOSA's Basil Manuel.
At the moment, our schools are not ready. They certainly haven't got all the equipment.
Satu's Nomo Sakembi says the Basic Education Department's draft plan, announced in Parliament yesterday, left the union with more questions than answers surrounding the safety of pupils and teachers. Meanwhile, lobby group Equal Education says it's deeply disappointed that the department failed to present any plans on the National School Nutrition Program. Thando Kupega, Eyewitness News.
The Basic Education Ministry is expected to announce the date for a phased-in reopening of schools in the afternoon. It's day 2 of the court case in the showdown between Workers' Union AMCU and the Mineral Resources Department. Now, the union has taken the department to court to compel the minister, Gwede Mantashe, to institute binding regulations for employers during the COVID-19 pandemic. The legal action comes as mines prepare to resume production at 50% capacity. Khomotso Modise has more.
During a virtual Labour court sitting, lawyers for AMCU argued that there is a need for binding regulations attached with possible criminal sanctions if mine bosses do not comply. They say Section 9 of the Mine Health and Safety Act makes provision for this, as COVID-19 is both an occupational and public health crisis. But the Mineral Resources Department has disputed this, saying the regulations already gazetted are enough and there is no proof that mine bosses will not comply. The court will today continue hearing testimony from the Minerals Council, which has already highlighted that mine workers are at a higher risk of contracting the virus because of underlying illnesses like silicosis and tuberculosis. Eyewitness News.
Adcon says its turnaround journey has been a tough one, but it will work closely with its business practitioners to plug the company's financial hole. The group, which owns Jet and Edgar's, wants to file for voluntary business rescue within the next few days in order to stay afloat. It's hoping that the move will help buy some time to raise money. Anyati reports.
With 2 billion lost since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, Edcon is predicting a further decline in sales even after the easing of lockdown regulations. Although it's filing for business rescue, the company says it'll still open its stores in line with Level 4 regulations. CEO Grant Patterson says they hope some version of the business will emerge, enabling it to continue serving customers.
All our attention at the moment for the next few days is going to be on how to open safely.
The company says it's struggling to pay staff salaries as well as its suppliers and will now look to the COVID-19 relief program to help bridge the financial gap. Ayanda Nyati, Eyewitness News.
And Uganda's High Court has ordered MPs to pay back a lump sum they got for helping to fight COVID-19 in their constituencies. Last week, the court ordered Parliament to stop the payments, but the money had already been deposited into the lawmakers' bank's account. Chanjo Cornish reports.
Opposition to the payments of more than 90,000 rand to MPs has united President Yoweri Museveni, who calls it morally reprehensible, with his arch-rival Bobby Wine MP, who has denounced it as shameful. They agree the money should be paid to bodies specially set up to fight COVID-19. The High Court case was brought by independent MP Gerald Karuhanga, who opposed the payments. Uganda's had 81 confirmed cases of COVID-19, but no deaths from coronavirus to date. Jean-Jacques Cornish, Eyewitness News.
Gold is trading at $1,717.23. The rand is at 18.16 to the dollar, 22.64 to the pound, 19.72 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $24.75 a barrel.
And in the traffic, we're still seeing those heavy delays on the R80 East in the city of Tshwane between the Hairpin Bend and Eskiam Pahlele Drive. There's also that heavy backup heading towards Midrand on the N1 South between Samrand and Olifantsfontein Road.
It's a fine day in Gauteng. Temperatures will peak at highs of 17 and 20 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. South Africa has lost one of its liberation struggle veterans and anti-apartheid heroes in Dennis Goldberg, who died at the age of 87.
Eyewitness News. In touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.mobi.
For all you need to know about COVID-19,
stay tuned to 702.
Your CBS Makaiza on 702.
For the curious.
Live.
Online.
Smartphones.
DSTV.
And 92.7.
And 106 FM.
7 minutes after 10 o'clock this hour, we want to take a close look at a Human Rights Commission report that, and there's no other way of putting it, really flays the Cape Town's city's attempt to deal with homelessness, which started out as a good news story. One of those
At 8 hours GMT, welcome to the newsroom from the BBC World Service. I'm Alex Ridson. A coronavirus milestone in South Korea. No new local infections in the entire country. 4:20 p.m. and officially records its first 2 coronavirus deaths. President Trump says he won't renew America's national COVID-19 social distancing guidelines.
It's not going to come back on anything near what we went through.
In Nigeria.
He will use weapons like knife, dog chain. He will use it to flog on my body. He will use machete to flog me. He was just trembling. He said, I will kill you. I will kill you.
Campaigners warn of a lockdown upsurge in domestic and sexual violence. And
she turned herself into a giant antibody, and kind of like the Incredible Hulk. She was rampaging around the world, killing all of the virus that she could find.
One of 6,000 coronavirus streams. This is the BBC.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. France has experienced its biggest economic contraction since the Second World War in the first 3 months of this year, reflecting the impact of the coronavirus outbreak on the country. Gross domestic product contracted by 5.8%, the biggest drop since quarterly GDP evaluation began in 1949. Our economics correspondent Andrew Walker reports.
The dramatic decline in the French economy reflects the health and the shutdown of what the Statistics Agency calls non-essential activities. There were sharp falls in consumer spending and in investment, especially construction after building sites were closed. It was only in March that the lockdown came into effect, so even these stark figures do not fully reflect the economic impact of the pandemic and measures taken to contain its spread. Within the last 24 hours, the United States has also published figures showing an economic contraction in the first 3 months of 2020.
The energy giant Royal Dutch Shell is reducing its dividend for the first time since World War II, after the drop in oil prices triggered by the coronavirus pandemic nearly halved its quarterly earnings. Its net income, which was at 5 points for the last year, has dropped to below $3 billion. South Korea has reported no locally transmitted infections of the coronavirus for the first time in more than 2 months. It's been seen as a major landmark for a country which was once the worst affected outside China. Yoon Tae-ho, the disinfection officer at South Korea's Central Disaster Management Headquarters, announced the latest figures in a televised address.
4 new patients confirmed today were found during the quarantine process at the airport, and there were no domestic cases. Also, it seems there have been no infections related to the general election, where about 29 million voters participated.
In February, the number of infections appeared to be spiralling out of control, but the authorities managed to contain the disease through comprehensive testing and tracing. The first two deaths from coronavirus have been recorded in Yemen, raising fresh concern of an outbreak that could bring new devastation to the war-ravaged country. Our Arab Affairs editor Sebastian Usher reports.
Yemen has faced major outbreaks of disease, cholera in particular, as a result of a war that's lasted more than 5 years in what was already the poorest country in the Arab world. A health official in Aden acknowledged that it was hard even to detect coronavirus in Yemen, where other prevalent diseases such as dengue fever exhibit similar symptoms and where testing remains extremely limited. The entry points into Yemen were sealed further to try to prevent coronavirus from getting into the country. But now it's there, fears are rising over how quickly it might spread.
World news from the BBC. President Trump has said he believes that China will do anything it can to prevent him being re-elected in November. He told the Reuters news agency that Beijing's handling of the coronavirus crisis was proof. The US economy, badly affected by the pandemic, had been the main focus of Mr. Trump's re-election campaign. Germany has banned the Lebanese Islamist group Hezbollah and labelled it a sheer terrorist organisation. The United States and Israel have both urged Germany to bring in the ban. Our correspondent, Jamie Hill, is in Berlin.
At first light, police raided mosques and offices of suspected Hezbollah members in what marks a significant departure in Germany's policy on the Lebanese organisation. As officers took away documents and hard drives, the country's interior minister announced that Germany would no longer distinguish between the military arm of the organisation, which is banned as a terrorist group in many EU member states, and its political arm. It's estimated there are just over 1,000 Hezbollah activists in Germany who are no longer allowed to work on the organisation's behalf.
Captain Tom Moore, the British war veteran whose coronavirus fundraising efforts inspired a country in lockdown, is celebrating his 100th birthday. Captain Tom has raised a staggering $37 million for health charities by walking laps of his garden. Spitfire fighter planes have staged a flypast at his home. And later today, he'll receive a hand-delivered letter of congratulations from Queen Elizabeth. The veteran Bollywood actor Rishi Kapoor has died aged 67. He'd been diagnosed with cancer in 2018. He came from a family which has dominated the Hindi film industry. His first lead role was in the 1973 film Bobby, a story of love across castes. couple continued to play the romantic lead in dozens of pictures for over 2 decades, then making a successful transition to character roles. BBC News.
Listening to the newsroom from the BBC World Service with me, Alex Ridson. It's a national holiday in South Korea to celebrate Buddha's birthday, but despite reporting no new cases of locally transmitted coronavirus, the health authorities are urging people to remain cautious. Only 4 new infections have been recorded, all from imported cases, taking the national tally to 10,765,247. We're joined by Julie Yoon from the BBC's Korean service. Julie, this is very good news for South Korea.
A fire destroys much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, Mali, where 1,000 people who fled violence take refuge. Ivorian court jails former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering.
In South Africa, the homeless are the most affected by containment measures that have been in place in the country for more than a month. With these restrictive measures, this very disadvantaged section of the population can no longer count on the generosity of motorists, shopkeepers or pedestrians. Without any social safety net, the destitute, mostly migrants living on begging, are today in a food and health emergency.
Our livelihood is centered on city begging. So now that the country is on lockdown, it is impossible for us to go out on the streets to look for donations.
Everywhere in town there is nobody to beg, so things become very tough, everything becomes tough, so we are living from hand to mouth.
This week, South Africa announced an increase in social assistance for the poor, the elderly and the disabled, but foreigners are excluded. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, at least 265 million people worldwide could face food insecurity by the end of the year.
A fire destroyed much of the main camp for displaced people in Bamako, where more than 1,000 people who fled the violence in central Mali have found refuge. No report on casualties was immediately available. And he says, the fire caught us by surprise. We saw smoke from afar, and after about 20 minutes the fire had spread, and now we have lost many animal hides and sacks of rice. It's a hard blow for us. We don't know what to do. Myself, I've lost all my goats who were forced to run away, but some managed to escape. We lost our food supplies. The cause of the fire still remains unknown. At the moment, it is difficult to say what caused the fire. However, based on the information we gathered upon arrival at the site and our investigations, the fire came from the rubbish heap between the site and the public road. So the fire came from the rubbish heap. But as to what caused it, I cannot tell you. According to humanitarian workers, the camp houses more than 1,000 people who are Fulani from central Mali who are chased out of their homes by a cycle of jihadists and inter-community violence. An Ivorian court on Tuesday sentenced exiled former Prime Minister Guillaume Soro to 20 years in jail on charges of embezzlement and money laundering. The Ivorian state prosecutor hailed the verdict as a dawn to democracy that will usher in transparency in the fight against corruption in the West African state. And he says this decision marks the beginning of a new era in Côte d'Ivoire. Corrupt people must be tracked down wherever they are so that our state can fulfill its commitment in the fight against corruption, which is so dear to our client, the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Soro, a former rebel leader and a candidate in the presidential elections this October, currently lives in France. He was accused of buying a house in Abidjan in 2007 with public money. And he continues by saying, the trial is far from being politically motivated. He noted at the hearing with the various testimonies, the documents in the file, that funds were actually diverted to the detriment of the state of Côte d'Ivoire. Barring bad faith, we cannot see any political intent in this trial. The Abidjan court on Tuesday fined him nearly 7 million euros, ordered the confiscation of his Abidjan home, and barred him from civic duties for 5 years. It also issued a fresh arrest warrant for Soro, who is also the former parliament speaker and who is now effectively barred from contesting the election.
100 kilos of rice, 10 liters of oil and 10 kilograms of sugar, and a box of 18 pieces of soap. This is the box that 1 million Senegalese households will receive as food handouts of the government amid the virus. This food aid was launched with the Senegalese Minister of Community Development, Mansour Faye. The minister said that this food aid sent to 1 million families could reach 8 to 10 million people. According to the World Bank, 16 million inhabitants live on less than $2 a day. As the Ramadan just started, the curfew and other restrictions are still ongoing on the country. It makes it more difficult for many families to get through the sanitary measures. The President Macky Sall declared a state of emergency and imposed a dusk-to-dawn curfew in a bid to curb the spread of the virus. The West African country has recorded 800 cases of COVID-19 and 9 deaths.
Announced a $26 billion aid package to support the economy and the country's most vulnerable people. The announcement followed violent clashes with the police in some areas during the distribution of food packages.
Another significant area that requires massive additional expenditure is the relief of hunger and social distress in our communities across the country.
Some unique measures are also being employed in parts of Africa. People in Madagascar are enthusiastically consuming a herbal tea named COVID-19 Remedy. While some doubt the efficacy of the herbal brew, the Malagasy president André Jalina said its effectiveness is noticeable in 7 days. On the African continent, strategies are multiplying to defeat the virus. UNICEF has also released a new version of Miriam Makiba's hit Pata Pata, performed by Benin's Angelique Kidjo.